Chapter 1374. In the end, Yichen decided to take the risk. Reaching the peak was his goal. If he did not dare to take this risk, what right did he have to reach the peak? Raising the heaven sword with his right hand, Yichen suddenly waved the sword. The sword chi was like a waterfall, sweeping 100 miles away. Boom! The sword chi clashed with an invisible force and disappeared instantly. No danger. It's just that this desolate god's will is so weak. Yichen let out a sigh of relief at first, but then he frowned slightly. It was obvious that the desolate god's will was much stronger than the sword chi's. According to the desolate god's will that was triggered by the baboon, it would only take half a day for the martial Yuan Shen's chaotic will to be eliminated. But now, the time had to be delayed by 1,000,000 times. No hurry. This is also a test for me. For Yichen, this was indeed a test. In order to trigger the desolate god's will, he had to attack the invisible force, which was the barrier of desolate god's secret territory. This was not a short-term project, but a long-term project. During this period, he had to attack at least 1,000,000,000 times. Of course, before this project, he had to take care of the Iron Star Snake first. The Iron Star Snake was a ferocious beast. Facing a superior, its instinct would make it surrender. Facing someone similar to it, it would never retreat. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of metal clashing was endless, from morning to night, and from night to the next morning. The battle between the man and the snake lasted for a whole week. After a week, Yichen's strength had declined quite a bit. In the wilderness god continent, not eating meat for a week was equivalent to an ordinary person not eating for a day. Fortunately, the Iron Star Snake was not much better off. In terms of battle power, it was a bit lower than Yichen. Although the wounds on its body could heal very quickly, it would still consume a lot of energy. Another 3 days passed. The man and the snake had been fighting for a whole 10 days. Die! Yichen gathered his remaining strength and pierced through the Iron Star Snake's head with the sword burial style. As the snake weakened, its defense had obviously decreased by a lot. Otherwise, Yichen would not have been able to pierce through it. In the end, the Iron Star Snake still died in Yichen's hands. If it were not a ferocious beast, it would be impossible for Yichen to kill it. Sky-splitting, let's eat together. Yichen was starving and exhausted. He called out to Sky Splitter and started to roast the Iron Star Snake meat. The aroma of the meat filled the air as Yichen wolfed down the meat. On the other side, Heaven Splitter was advancing. The Iron Star Snake was a mid-tier legend rank ferocious beast, while Sky Splitter was a quasi-legend ferocious beast. The gap between the two was immeasurable. Sky Splitter had only swallowed 2 pieces of flesh, and its body had already undergone drastic changes. Heaven Splitter's feet had grown twice as big as before. His 4 limbs were like 4 pillars, and his claws were as sharp as blades. His fur had also grown thicker and darker. His back was elongating as if there was a dragon swimming on it. His ears were also sharper than before, and his eyes were like 2 large diamonds. His pupils were like a hexagram, and they were constantly spinning. On his forehead, there was a golden mark that wasn't too obvious. It turned out that this golden mark was also a hexagram, a golden hexagram. Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter, Heaven Splitter. The moment his advancement was completed, Heaven Splitter faced the sky and roared. The roar of a legend-rank ferocious beast reverberated, emitting a threatening pressure. At this moment, Heaven Splitter's shoulder was 6 meters tall, and his body was more than 10 meters long. He looked mighty and majestic, and it would probably be more comfortable to sit on. Opening his mouth and sticking out his tongue, Heaven Splitter ran to Yichen's side and used his tongue to lick Yichen's face. This represented his loyalty and love for his master. Go to the side and eat the rest. Yichen waved his hand. He wanted to sleep. Under the deep starry sky, the bonfire flickered. Yichen lay on Heaven Splitter's body, sleeping comfortably. Heaven Splitter's eyes were closed, and they would occasionally open a slit, emitting a sharp and cold light as he vigilantly scanned the surroundings. Early the next morning, Yichen stretched his body and got up. After eating some barbecued meat, Yichen pulled out the sky sword and started attacking the barrier of the desolate god's secret realm. As for Heaven Splitter, it had nothing to do, so it went out to hunt. As a primary legend rank ferocious beast, its strength was different from before. Of course, it wouldn't run too far. As the days passed, the black strands on Yi Chen's martial Dao Yuan's spirit gradually decreased. Repeating the same action every day was, to be honest, very boring. It was even more boring than secluded cultivation. Secluded cultivation was actually a state of selflessness, where one would lose track of time and not feel bored. In the first 5 years, Yi Chen only swung the sky sword mechanically. One day, he suddenly discovered that his attack power had increased by a lot. After careful observation, he discovered that his heart sword realm had actually increased by a lot. If he was at the initial heart sword realm before, he had now reached the peak of the initial heart sword realm. It was said that Kong Xueli of the Redbud Flower tribe was at the peak of the intermediate heart force realm, higher than the majority of legend rank supremes. The heart is the embodiment of a person's inner self. Not being troubled by boredom, one's heart force would increase imperceptibly. Feeling the improvement of the heart sword realm, Yi Chen put more effort into it. 10 years passed. Yi Chen suddenly felt that the whole world had become much clearer. He was looking at everything in the world with a detached attitude. Vaguely, he seemed to be able to see the rules of the operation of everything in the world. Intermediate Heart Sword Realm. Unknowingly, Yi Chen's Heart Sword Realm took a big step forward. Heart Force was the hardest to improve. It was different from cultivation or martial arts. The latter two would slowly become stronger with the accumulation of time. Heart Force, on the other hand, had nothing to do with time. Some old fellows' heart force was far inferior to the younger generation. Heart higher than the sky, this was a derogatory term, but also a commendatory one. The former represented reaching beyond one's reach, while the latter represented having high aspirations and having the confidence to surpass everything. Intermediate Heart Sword Realm. It turns out that my sword arts still have some minute flaws. Reaching the Intermediate Heart Sword Realm, Yi Chen's vision of sword arts had increased by 10 times. With a single thought, the flaws of sword arts could not be hidden. The same supreme sword art, excluding the factor of heart force amplification, was displayed with the same power. But with the higher the heart sword realm, the more ingenious the effects could be displayed, the clearer the grasp of timing, the changes in the enemy's mentality, and the essence of sword arts. Soon, the black strands have already disappeared by 90%. In the blink of an eye, 15 years passed. The black strands on Yi Chen's Yuan Shun were only left with the last tenth. This tenth of the black strands entangled in the body of the Yuan Shen, and it was very difficult to get rid of them. But as the will of the desolate god swept through, these black strands were inevitable. Sooner or later, they would be swept out and wiped clean. When the black strands completely disappeared, it would be the time when Yi Chen broke through to the silver rank Yuan Shen and rushed to the legendary rank. Chapter 1375. In the Redbud Flower tribe, War Bear, who was as strong as a bear, was fighting with Kong Xueli. The two of them felt the pressure from the 3 people in front of them, so they worked even harder in their usual cultivation. It could be seen that the two of them had improved greatly. Their strength had increased by at least 100-fold. The last time they attempted the Wilderness God Tower, the two of them had just become supremes. Their silver-ranked martial spirit was still very weak, so they were only able to reach the 750th and 755th levels. This time, they were confident that they could reach the 770th level, or even higher. Kong Xueli's figure flickered as she lightly pressed her palm against the war bear. This was her secret art, Falling Flower Palm. It seemed to have no power, but it was extremely overbearing. War Bear crossed his arms, and a dazzling light bloomed from his body. Sun Tyrant Body. Boom. War Bear was sent flying. The Falling Flower Palm's tyrannical power was something that one wouldn't know until they experienced it themselves. Climbing out of the pit, War Bear smiled and said, "What a great falling flower palm. It contains the will of the heavens. I can't dodge it at all. Flowers bloom and wilt. This was the cycle of the heavenly Tao, and it could not be changed." Kong Xueli's falling flower palm contained the charm of this cycle of life and death. Of course, The most important thing was the heart power. Without the heart power, the falling flower palm would lose a lot of its brilliance. Your sun tyrant body should have cultivated to the 9 suns realm, right? Kang Xueli asked. Zhan Xiong grinned and said, I just broke through not long ago. I'm only at the initial 9 yang stage. The sun tyrant body was a body refining technique passed down by the Battle Pagoda tribe since ancient times. The highest realm was the 10 yang realm. According to the records of the technique, once one reached the 10 yang realm, they could even resist the attack of a demigod. This was also the technique that the Battle Pagoda tribe relied on to survive. Basically, everyone practiced it. Currently, the one with the highest achievement was the leader of the Battle Pagoda tribe, Titan. His sun tyrant body had already been cultivated to the late 9 yang realm, which allowed him to resist the attack of a high-level legendary sovereign. Kang Xueli nodded. Her falling flower palm couldn't do anything to an early-stage 9 yang cultivator combined with a saint artifact armor. Other than the first demon venerable with the great demon king bloodline, perhaps even Yichen wouldn't be able to do anything to him. This was the fearsomeness of a physique tempering technique. I wonder what level they are at? War Bear suddenly said. Kang Xueli pondered and said, in terms of talent and comprehension, Evil Star is on par with us. He isn't that powerful. The truly powerful ones are the first Demon Venerable and Sword Venerable. You can't look at them with common sense. Sword Sovereign was Yi Chen's title. There was no Sword Sovereign more powerful than Yi Chen on the entire Wilds God continent. Most of the leaders of Grade 7 tribes were no match for Yi Chen. The first Demon Sovereign has the bloodline of the Great Demon King. His potential is limitless and he is constantly improving. The next time we meet, he will probably be even more powerful. I don't have the confidence to compete with him. In my opinion, the Sword Sovereign will also be gradually surpassed by him. War Bear sighed. Kang Xueli shook her head. That's not necessarily true. Don't underestimate Sword Sovereign. He's not a legendary sovereign yet, but he already has such terrifying strength. Once he becomes a legendary sovereign, even the first demon sovereign might not be able to suppress him. In my opinion, it won't be long before Sword Sovereign becomes a legendary sovereign and fights against the first demon sovereign. Kang Xueli's eyes were very sharp. People with strong mental strength were able to see many things. Oh, if Sword Sovereign can become a legendary sovereign, it will indeed be worth watching. However, I still don't think that he will succeed. Just like you and me, even if he becomes a legendary sovereign, he will still need a long time to consolidate. In Yunzhong village, the first demon sovereign's courtyard was shrouded in darkness. It was so dark that there wasn't a trace of light, and there was no fluctuation. It was like a pool of stagnant water. Some people in Yunzhong village were frightened when they saw the darkness. Because the darkness didn't just cover the courtyard, it extended to the surrounding areas. Some sovereigns accidentally fell into the darkness and got lost. If Yun Piaomiao hadn't discovered them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. For this reason, Yun Piaomiao had set up a few layers of formations to prevent the darkness from spreading. On a tall pavilion in the center of Yunzhong village, Yun Piaomiao thought to herself, what a terrifying bloodline of the great demon king. Fortunately, he isn't from the Huangshan continent. He can't be a threat to us. Otherwise, we would have to get rid of him as soon as possible to prevent future troubles. To the people outside, the courtyard of the first demon sovereign was shrouded in darkness. However, inside the courtyard, one would realize that it wasn't darkness at all. Instead, it was light. Darkness and light interweave together. It was impossible to tell which was which. Perhaps, darkness and light were relative and couldn't exist independently. In the spacious room, the first demon sovereign stretched out his right hand. A ball of light appeared on his palm and slowly rotated. Outside the ball of light, it was getting darker and darker. It was so dark that even one's gaze would be sucked into it. Only absolute darkness can create absolute light. However, just light and darkness aren't enough. There must be a strong force to push them together. The first demon sovereign's palm closed slightly. The ball of light became smaller and smaller. It seemed like there was an extremely strong force suppressing the ball of light. As the ball of light shrank, The surrounding darkness became denser. It had already reached an incomprehensible realm. The number of black strands decreased until there was only one strand left. This strand of black strand had pierced through the spine of the martial Yuan Shin. It was the strongest chaotic will. Being swept by the will of the desolate god, the black strand of black strand roared unwillingly. Within this chaotic will were the remnant thoughts of countless evil spirits. After fusing together, it became an even more vicious demonic will. Seriously speaking, the chaotic will was in existence on the same level as the universe will, hell will, and true God will. However, this chaotic will wasn't pure. It was formed after birth. Therefore, it couldn't fight against the will of the desolate god. Crackle. The black strand of black strand let out a series of crackling sounds. It became dimmer and thinner. When another wave of desolate gods will swept over, the black strand of black strand finally dissipated. So easy. When the black strand of black strand disappeared, Yichen felt like a huge rock had been lifted off his shoulders. He felt relaxed from inside out. It was an unprecedented relaxation. Martial Dao Yuan Soul, evolve. Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shin had long accumulated enough. It was because of the existence of the chaotic will that he couldn't break through to the silver class. Now that the hidden danger was gone, Yi Chen immediately chose to break through. Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shin floated out, emitting an intense bronze light. The bronze light gradually transformed, giving birth to strands of silver. As the silver light increased, the aura of Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shin grew stronger. With every breath, it would be 10 times stronger. From afar, Heaven Splitter watched Yi Chen quietly. It understood that its master was about to break through, and he would become even stronger. After an unknown period of time, Yi Chen's martial Yuan Shin had turned into a pure silver color, as if it was made of illusory silver. Waves of energy spread out, and the ground instantly caved in, forming a huge pit. Finally, legend rank. Yi Chen opened his eyes, and the silver martial Yuan Shin returned to his body. Chapter 1376. The martial Dao Yuan spirit was divided into 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. At the bronze level, the lifespan of an honorable would be greatly increased. It would not be a problem to live for hundreds of thousands of years, or even 1,000,000 years. At the silver level, the lifespan would be greatly increased. One could easily live for more than 1,000,000 years, with the longest record being 5,000,000 years. As for the gold level, this was the martial Dao Yuan spirit of a demigod. It had the property of eternal indestructibility and could live for more than 10 million years. As for how long they could live, no one knew, because every time a demigod was born, they would disappear into the universe after a few years. No one knew where they went. When the martial Dao Yuan spirit reached the silver level, Yi Chen's aura became pure like the vast starry sky, eternal and unfathomable. Boom! With a punch, space-time trembled. The silver-level martial Dao Yuan spirit allowed Yi Chen's combat power to increase crazily. The power of this punch was much stronger than when he used the heavenly sword. The fist energy landed on the barrier of the desolate god's secret domain, triggering waves of desolate god's will. Essence, qi, and spirit were the foundation of a person, while Yuan Shen of martial arts was the condensation and transformation of the essence, qi, and spirit. It was the foundation of the foundation. The stronger Yuan Shen of martial arts, the stronger the battle power would be. The stronger the Yuan Shen of martial arts was, the stronger the battle power would be. This was different from sword intent, which could only increase a part of the battle power. 90% of a person's battle power was reflected in Yuan Shen of martial arts and martial arts. Yuan Shen of martial arts was the foundation of a person, while martial arts were the amplifiers, which could increase one's strength. Of course, it didn't mean that sword intent wasn't important. On the contrary, sword intent was as important as Yuan Shen of martial arts and martial arts. Yi Chen, you broke through to legend rank? After returning to the Unfalling Eagle tribe, Lan Yu could tell with a glance that Yi Chen had a breakthrough. Yes. I was lucky. It was indeed luck this time. That's great. You will definitely be first in the Desolate God Tower. Lan Yu was very confident in Yi Chen. Yi Chen shook his head. Don't underestimate the first demon sovereign. Although I've smoothly become a legendary sovereign, and my strength has improved by leaps and bounds, the first demon sovereign definitely hasn't stopped improving after all these years. Perhaps his improvement isn't any less than mine. You're right, but I don't think you should underestimate yourself. I have confidence in you anyway. Lan Yu smiled. Yi Chen also smiled. Of course I won't underestimate myself. Everything depends on this time. Without a competitive spirit, one would not be able to improve quickly. It all depended on how you viewed competition. For Yi Chen, winning or losing was not important. What was important was how much effort you put into winning or losing. Ying Lai Xiong heard from Lan Yu that Yi Chen had broken through to legend rank and laughed out loud. If Yi Chen could get first place again, adding on Lan Yu, the Unfalling Eagle tribe would get 3 portions of time, which was a good thing. Time passed very quickly. It was time for the 4th attempt at the Desolate God Tower. Early in the morning, the people of the 5 great tribes arrived at the plains near the Desolate God Tower. Hey, he really became a legendary supreme. Zhang Xiong noticed the change in Yi Chen. Did he break through? Evil Star squinted his eyes and looked at the first demon venerable. He no longer had any thoughts of competing with Yi Chen. Yi Chen hadn't broken through yet, and he wasn't his opponent, let alone Yi Chen who had broken through. The only one who could be Yi Chen's opponent was the first demon venerable, and vice versa. Originally, he thought that the first demon venerable would catch up and completely dominate everyone. He didn't expect that after maintaining his advantage for 100 years, there would be a new change. First demon venerable, your opponent is not simple. Let's see if you can keep the first place this time. Interesting, very interesting? The first demon venerable sized up Yi Chen. His eyes emitted an intense battle intent. The first place that was obtained too easily was not what he wanted. He wanted to make Yi Chen lose wholeheartedly and not dare to have any other thoughts. Just like Evil Star, Yi Chen had subconsciously submitted to him. I'm looking forward to your performance. I hope you won't disappoint me. The first demon venerable said to Yi Chen. Yi Chen said indifferently, I'm just afraid you won't be able to accept the result. There's nothing I can't accept. Just bring it on. Then you'll have to wait and see. As the two spoke, the tower challenge began. The two of them were the last to enter the Desolate God Tower. Ding-ling-ling. The bell of the Desolate God Tower rang crazily. The moment the two of them entered, the bell rang. So fast. Everyone stared at the crystal steel and were dumbfounded. The first place was either Yi Chen or the first demon venerable. The floors behind the two of them were flickering crazily. Every time they blinked, it would flicker. Evil Star and company were also very fast, but they were slower than the two of them. 100th floor. 200th floor. 500th floor. From the 500th floor onward, the difference started to show. Other than Yi Chen and the first demon venerable, the rest of the floors were no longer the same. Evil Star was temporarily ranked 3rd, Kong Xueli was 4th, Battle Bear was 5th, and Lan Yu was 8th. As for 1st and 2nd place, it was constantly changing. Sometimes, Yi Chen was 1st, and sometimes, the first demon venerable was 1st. On the 600th floor, a large number of young geniuses were eliminated. When they saw the speed of the 1st and 2nd place, their eyes nearly popped out. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself with others. There were only 9 people who made it past the 700th floor. Lan Yu had improved by 1 and was now in 8th place. She stopped at the 705th floor. The 9th place was 4 floors lower than her, at the 701st floor. The 7th and 6th places were at the 708th and 710th floor respectively. The difference between the 4 of them wasn't very big, and they were evenly matched. Yi Chen, you can do it? After coming out, Lan Yu secretly cheered for Yi Chen. Currently, only Yi Chen could pose a threat to the first demon venerable. The rest had been left far behind. 792nd floor. Previously, Yi Chen stopped at this floor. This time, he instantly made it. The Desolate Spirit couldn't even block a single sword strike from him. 795th floor. 800th floor. Finally, Yi Chen reached the 800th floor. At the 800th floor, Yi Chen still didn't find it strenuous. 820th floor. 830th floor. It wasn't only Yi Qin. The first demon venerable also seemed to be riding a rocket. The number of floors he cleared soared. At times, he would be one floor higher than Yi Qin, and at other times, he would be one floor lower than Yi Qin. At their cultivation realm, sometimes, it depended on the timing. If the timing was good, they might be able to quickly clear the floor. I can't take it anymore. Evil Star stopped at the 785th floor. When he came out, he glanced at the crystal stone monument and couldn't help but gasp. What kind of medicine did the two of them eat? Even if they improved, it shouldn't be this exaggerated. One had to know that the higher one went in the Desolate God Tower, the harder it was to clear each floor. It was already very impressive to clear a few more floors, but the two of them improved by dozens of floors every time. Chapter 1377. The leaders of the 5 great tribes looked very serious. The 830th level was getting closer and closer to them. They had only made it to the 900th level. Although the 70th level was more difficult than the previous 800 levels, it didn't stop the two of them from making rapid progress. He's actually on par with the great Demon King's bloodline. This kid must be an influential figure outside. Yun Piamyo muttered. At this moment, the leaders of the 5 tribes had already treated the first demon venerable and Yi Chen as equals. Although the two's current strength was inferior to theirs, they had the time to catch up and even surpass them. On the 835th floor, the first demon venerable pushed his strength to the limit. His dazzling fist energy was like a black meteor in the night sky. He punched out quickly and fiercely. On the 834th floor, Yi Chen's sword was like the sharpest scalpel. It flickered as it followed Huang Ling's flaws. Every time it flickered, it would leave a mark on Huang Ling's body. Die! A sword parried Huang Ling's saber. Sparks flew everywhere. Yi Chen's sword brushed past the saber and pierced Huang Ling's throat. It really wasn't easy. Fortunately, not only did I become a legendary supremacy, but my heart sword has also reached the middle stage. Without any time to rest, Yi Chen was transported to the 835th floor. Yi Chen caught up. Yi Chen surpassed him. He was surpassed again. The rankings of Yi Chen and the first demon venerable kept changing. Outside the Desolate God Tower, everyone's expression kept changing. Yi Chen was right. The first demon venerable is really terrifying. Lan Yu frowned. Beside her, Ying Lai Xiong said, "They are the pride of their generation. They are natural rivals. Without their talent, it's impossible to predict their future." Sometimes, comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. Ordinary geniuses wouldn't be able to compete with others who could improve by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. As long as such people were given a chance, they could reach a realm that others couldn't even dream of, step by step towards the peak and becoming a legend. On the crystal stele, Yi Chen was first at the 840th step, while the first demon sovereign was second, also at the 840th step. The two had been on the 841st step for a long time. Yi Chen was the first to reach this step, so his ranking was ahead. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or not, but the desolate spirit on the 841 floor was nearly as strong as Yi Chen. The odds of victory were 50-50. If one was not careful, it was normal for one to be defeated. Of course, it would be even more difficult for his opponent to defeat Yi Chen by relying on the defensive sword style. It should be known that the defensive sword style was specifically used against opponents who were slightly stronger than the user. It would be extremely difficult for someone of the same level to break through it, unless they had some special ability or martial arts. Compared to Yi Chen, the first demon ancestor's situation was slightly worse. It wasn't that Huang Ling was stronger than the first demon ancestor. In truth, the first demon ancestor even had a slight advantage in the battle. Unfortunately, it would take a long time for him to turn this slight advantage into an advantage and then into a victory. The first demon ancestor's body was made of flesh and blood after all, so he would eventually get tired. If he couldn't defeat his opponent before he got tired, the chances of him passing this level would be very slim. Boom. After 3 days and 3 nights, the first demon ancestor started to get impatient. His body began to emit a silver-black light. This was the light of his martial yuan spirit. Ordinary Supreme's martial yuan spirits were silver-white in color, but the first demon ancestor's martial yuan spirit was different. It was actually silver-black in color. Very few people knew that the great Demon King bloodline not only had unlimited potential, but the martial yuan spirit they had was also different. This was the darkness yuan spirit unique to the great Demon King bloodline. It was much stronger than ordinary martial yuan spirits, and its explosive power was even more ferocious. After a few heavy strikes, Huang Ling was constantly forced to retreat. However, he never lost his stance, making the first demon ancestor unable to find a chance to hit his opponent. On the other hand, Yichen was defending and attacking at the same time. He was constantly looking for a chance, a 1-in-a-million chance. Such an opportunity was very rare. Yichen could only ensure that he didn't make a mistake and wait for others to make a mistake. 7 days have passed. Outside the desolate God Tower, many people sighed. The battle between the two had lasted for 7 days. To fight for 7 days without eating or drinking, no one else would be able to do it. Exhaustion and weakness. When these two factors came together, the vast majority of people would choose to give up. Or, their minds might not be able to take it, and a hole would appear in their hearts. Yichen. Lan Yu clenched her fists. She believed that Yichen wouldn't be the first to fall. Not to mention his strength, she admired Yichen's temperament. He was a person who would do what he said, a person who never gave up. Of course, the first demon ancestor also gave her a very terrifying feeling. His heart was like a deep pool of stagnant water, without any ripples. 8th day. 9th day. The first demon ancestor deliberately revealed a flaw. The reason he did so was because he had no other choice. He was certain that if the battle continued, he would most likely be the one defeated. This was because his opponent wasn't an ordinary life form. He didn't know what exhaustion was, nor did he know what weakness was. At this moment, he could only risk it. Otherwise, in a few more days, he wouldn't even have the chance to do so. Sensing a flaw, Huang Ling slashed out with his saber. The saber light was like lightning that was thousands of times faster. With a poochie sound, the first demon ancestor's left arm was severed. As if he couldn't feel any pain, a cold smile flashed on the first demon ancestor's face. His right fist punched towards Huang Ling's head with extreme speed and power. He was determined to succeed with this punch. This punch did indeed hit Huang Ling's head. Unfortunately, the first demon ancestor had underestimated Huang Ling's reaction speed. Huang Ling was 1 step ahead. With a flip of his saber, his head was sliced off. Bang! Huang Ling retreated a few steps. The first demon ancestor's fist force hadn't completely landed. With a grave and stern expression, the first demon sovereign walked out of the desolate God Tower. Subconsciously, he turned his head and looked at the crystal tablet. Yi Chen's image was still colorful, and his ranking was above his. Although the number of floors he had cleared was the same. Ying Liexiong, both of you are first. Let's split the time equally. Yun Piamiao didn't think that Yi Chen could pass the 841 level. If he could, he would have done it long ago. Right now, he should be getting weaker and weaker. Ying Liexiong retorted, how is there a tie for first? The first place is obviously Yi Chen. Both of them have the same number of levels. Yun Piamiao was a little unhappy. I only look at the crystal tablet's ranking. Ying Liexiong didn't take half a step back. Let's wait for Yi Chen to come out first. The two of you should stop arguing. Kong Siwei persuaded. To be honest, a tie for first place hadn't happened for countless years. It was indeed not easy to solve. Both of them were reasonable. The solution to this problem was very simple. That was for Yi Chen to surpass the first demon ancestor. However, the possibility was too small. 9 days had already passed. As time passed, the hope was getting smaller and smaller. On the evening of the 9th day, the number of floors passed behind Yi Chen's image suddenly flashed once. 841, it meant that Yi Chen had passed through the 841st floor. Chapter 1378. He surpassed it. Lan Yu waved her fist excitedly. Ying Liexiong was stunned at first. He then grinned at Yun Piao Miao. First place is ours. Do you still have any objections? Yun Piao Miao turned her head and looked depressed. This was too strange. He could even pass it like this. Amazing. Zhang Xiong looked at Kang Xueli in shock. The first demon lord with the bloodline of the great demon king had improved a lot. Last time he had passed 802 levels, and this time he had passed 840 levels. This speed of improvement was 10 times faster than theirs. They didn't expect Sword Venerable Yichen to improve even faster, surpassing the first demon lord. Kang Xueli shook her head. Don't look at me. I didn't expect him to surpass the first demon lord. Indeed, we don't understand their world. Zhang Xiong shook his head. Surpassed? Evil Star was a little dazed. When he regained his senses, he couldn't help but look at the first demon lord. This was the first time the first demon lord's face changed. It wasn't anger, but rather heaviness. Evil Star thought to himself. The first demon lord's heart wasn't heavy, but serious. He was starting to treat Yichen seriously. If he didn't treat Yichen seriously now, it wouldn't be confidence, but arrogance. The bloodline of the great demon king had never been arrogant, and he wasn't one either. The reason why the bloodline of the great demon king could stand at the peak was because they could maintain absolute calmness and rationality no matter what. This was innate. 842 levels. Yichen didn't last long before he was defeated by Huang Ling. He was already exhausted and didn't expect to pass the 842 levels. When he came out and saw Lan Yu's expression, Yichen knew that he had reached first again. To be honest, it was impossible for him not to feel anything. To him, the most important thing wasn't to defeat the bloodline of the great demon king, but to prove that he had the potential to reach the peak of the martial path. As for the bloodline of the great demon king, it was just a strong opponent. Their eyes met and sparks could be seen. The first demon lord and Yichen didn't say anything. They just looked at each other and retracted their gazes. They understood that the other party was their strongest opponent, so there was no need to say anything. The Yin-Yang sword art is complete. The Unfalling Eagle tribe received 3 portions of time, which was 30 years. Yi Chen's contribution was huge, so he was directly given 4 years. In only 2 years, Yi Chen created a perfect Yin-Yang swordsmanship. This Yin-Yang swordsmanship had 2 styles. The first style was Yin-Yang coexistence, and the second style was Yin-Yang Tai Chi. The coexistence of Yin and Yang was very mysterious. Once the sword was unleashed, the sword chi seemed to have a mind of its own. It did not increase or decrease, nor did it dissipate. After locking onto the enemy's aura, it would not disappear unless the enemy was dead. Of course, if the enemy was very strong and could break the coexistence of Yin and Yang, then that would be another matter. Yin-Yang Tai Chi, this was a sealing sword move. After the black and white sword chi formed a Tai Chi diagram, it would trap the enemy in the Tai Chi diagram and use the endless sword chi to obliterate the enemy. The area it covered could be big or small. The creation of the Yin-Yang sword art didn't directly increase Yi Chen's battle strength. After all, no matter how strong the Yin-Yang sword art was, it was only at the level of the 5 elements sword art and the space-time sword art. However, an additional sword art could make Yi Chen more comprehensive. Yin-Yang coexistence and Yin-Yang Tai Chi also had their own uses. In the 4th year, Yi Chen created the 4 symbols sword art. The 4 symbols sword art contained the 4 profound meanings of earth, water, fire, and wind. It was similar to the 5 elements sword art, but it was more tyrannical. The 4 symbols sword art also had 2 styles. The first was the 4 symbols hegemon sword art, which was derived from the hegemon sword art. The second was the 4 extremes of heaven and earth. The difference between the 4 symbols hegemon sword art and the hegemon sword art was that the 4 symbols hegemon sword art had a wide attack range. The sword aura would transform into the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise, while the hegemon sword art condensed the sword energy into a single line. It was an extreme attack. However, if the opponent was fast enough to dodge, it wouldn't be restricted by the hegemon sword art. The second move, Heaven and Earth 4 Extremes, was a passive attack. Using this move didn't require the use of treasured swords. What was required was the heart sword. Using the heart sword to condense the four symbols sword energy and hide it on the surface of the body. Once the enemy attacked, the four symbols sword energy would be activated to counterattack the enemy. At the crucial moment, it could also save the user from danger. Finally, the only sword arts that Yichen didn't know were the life and death sword art and the light and darkness sword art. In the 4 years, Yichen created 2 sword arts. Next, he planned to comprehend the word time and raise the profound of time to the great success realm, or even the perfection realm. After all, the profound of time was the second most profound after the profound of power. In terms of difficulty, it was much more difficult to comprehend than the profound of power. It was the most difficult profound to comprehend. Even though Yi Chen had become a legendary supreme, it wasn't easy for him to comprehend the profound of time to the great success realm. Figuratively speaking, the profound of power was like a person's strength, while the profound of time was like a person's lifespan. It was useless if one only had strength and died early. It was also useless if one only had lifespan without strength. There were many records about the great success realm of time. For example, one's lifespan could reach an unimaginable level, or one could control the flow of time in an area. Of course, this speed of time couldn't be as fast as the Tower of Time in the Paradise of Gods. It was already amazing to be able to speed up or slow down time by a few times. In the Tower of Time, it could be 10 or even 100 times faster. This wasn't something that humans could do. Only true gods could do. 96%, 97%, 98%. After spending 20 years, Yichen raised the profound of time to 98%. He was only one step away from the great success realm. At that time, there would be a qualitative leap. In the blink of an eye, 30 years had passed. The profound of time had finally reached the great success realm. The moment he exited the strange space, Yichen felt as if he could see the flow of time. He could see the trajectory of time. He could even feel his own lifespan. He felt that he could live for about 4 million years. He was only 1 million years away from the limit of legendary supremes. Is this the profound of time? So magical! The great success realm of power allowed Yichen to feel the essence of power. The profound of time also allowed Yichen to feel the essence of time. Of course, there was still a long way to go before he understood the essence. Have I reached the limit? After the profound of time reached the great success realm, Yichen found that he couldn't concentrate on comprehending the word time. It was very hard for him to understand. Could it be that the great success realm was a forbidden area that no one was allowed to enter? Your profound of time reached the great success realm? Ying Liexiong looked surprised. Yes. Yichen and Ying Liexiong would occasionally talk. This time, Yichen asked his question. Who knew that Ying Liexiong would be surprised that his profound of time reached the great success realm? I'm so envious. Ying Liexiong sighed and said, comprehending the profound of time requires talent. If you don't have enough talent, even if a demigod personally teaches you, you won't be able to comprehend the profound of time to a very high level. Otherwise, the word time has been in my unfalling eagle tribe for so many years. There wouldn't be no supremes who reached the great success realm. Chapter 1379. Yichen faintly nodded. Comprehending the time profound indeed required aptitude. The majority of supremes only comprehended 20 to 30% of the time profound. It was not that they didn't want to improve it, but they were truly limited by their aptitude. Even if they were given the word of time, they would only be able to improve 10 to 20% at most. Ying Liexiong continued, as for what you said, I know a thing or two. If I'm not wrong, you don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound. Don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound? Yichen thought about it and didn't understand. Let me put it this way. Do you feel that your lifespan has greatly increased and is close to the limit of legendary supremes? Yes. Yichen answered. That's right. Comprehending time profound is different from comprehending other profounds. It brings great changes to the body, especially to lifespan. Therefore, you need to get used to the time profound at this stage. Only after you get used to it can you continue comprehending time profound. It's like a person who suddenly has 100 times more power. If you can't control it, you'll be tired. Ing Liexiong explained. I see. Yichen finally understood. He had comprehended time profound to the great completion realm in such a short time. It was too fast. His perception of time and the universe's time were already a little out of sync. Not to mention that he couldn't continue comprehending time profound, even if he forcefully comprehended it to the great completion realm, it would probably cause a series of backlashes, such as a chaotic sense of time. A chaotic sense of time was an extremely terrifying thing. In a battle, a single moment could be fatal. After understanding the reason why time profound couldn't be improved, Yichen no longer hesitated. He started to create the third move of the space-time sword art. Although the first two moves had been perfected and there was nothing that could be changed, in Yichen's opinion, these two moves weren't enough to display the power of time profound. Less than 1,000 miles away from the place where Yichen and the Iron Star Snake had fought, a ripple spread out. It was like a calm lake suddenly being blown by the wind. The next moment, two black dots appeared from the ripple and became bigger and bigger. Finally, they turned into two figures. One was wearing a black robe and the other was wearing a gray robe. They looked extremely miserable, as if they had been chased by something. Their faces were red and their clothes were tattered. Damned Gemini Tyrannosaurus, why did I encounter it? The black-robed old man's face was gloomy. The desolate god's secret realm is incomparably terrifying. It's already not easy for us to come out alive. It's a pity that we didn't find the transmission array. The gray-robed elder reached out and wiped his tattered gray clothes. Teleportation array. I suspect that the desolate god's secret realm doesn't even have a teleportation array. Do you think that those 5 fellows are lying to us? They can't wait for us to leave, causing us to be trapped in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of thousands of years. Our starry sky bear dog kings also died in the desolate god's secret realm. Without them, our restrictions on those 5 fellows would be much weaker, the black-robed elder said suspiciously. The gray-robed elder's face turned cold. I hope they didn't lie to us. Last time, we were able to destroy 2 rank 8 tribes. This time, we can do it again. I haven't been out for more than 100,000 years. I wonder if the Wild's God continent has changed. The black-robed old man's eyes were filled with killing intent. The two of them did not travel together. Instead, they went their separate ways. The black-robed elder flew towards the Yunzhong tribe, while the gray-robed elder flew towards the Xinghai tribe. In the Yunzhong tribe, Yun Piaomiao was drinking tea in the pavilion. Opposite him sat his daughter and son-in-law. They had been married for tens of thousands of years. He did not know when they would give birth to a grandson. Looking at the courtyard where the first demon venerable was, Yun Piaomiao sighed. It would be great if his descendants were half as outstanding as the first demon venerable. Suddenly, Yun Piaomiao's expression changed. His daughter and son-in-law had never seen Yun Piaomiao with such an expression. They saw fear and dread on his face. Father, what happened? Yun Piaomiao's daughter could not help but ask. I didn't expect them to not be able to leave the Wild's God continent. Instead, they came out of the desolate god's secret realm. Yun Piaomiao muttered to himself as if he did not hear his daughter's question. Yun Piaomiao, there are too many things that you didn't expect. A black-robed elder appeared outside the Yunzhong tribe's array. His gaze could actually penetrate the layers of array and see Yun Piaomiao's mouth. Yun Piaomiao hesitated for a moment. He waved his hand and the array opened, allowing the black-robed elder to enter. I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years. At least you haven't lost your head yet. The black-robed elder's figure flashed and appeared in the pavilion. He looked at Yun Piaomiao's daughter and son-in-law. This should be your daughter. She looks pretty good. I remember that when I left, you didn't even have a child. Welcome, Supremacy. Yun Piaomiao's next action made his daughter and son-in-law turn pale with fright. Who was it that the leader had to welcome? Wasn't the Wild's God continent controlled by the leaders of the 5 major tribes? Hurry up and welcome the Supremacy. Yun Piaomiao quickly gave the two of them a look. Welcome, Supremacy. Although the two of them did not know when a Supremacy had appeared in the Yunzhong tribe, How could they not know that the black-robed elder's status was even higher than Yun Piaomiao's when they saw Yun Piaomiao's expression? I have something to say to the supremacy. The two of you can leave first. Yun Piaomiao ordered his daughter and son-in-law to leave. The two of them did not dare to stay any longer and quickly left the pavilion. Supremacy, please have some tea. Yun Piaomiao poured a cup of tea for the black-robed elder. The black-robed elder picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. Yun Piaomiao, I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years, but your aura has become much stronger. Let me ask you, suddenly, a strange expression flashed across the black-robed elder's face. Shua, his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in the courtyard of the first demon venerable. Who is it? The first demon venerable walked out of the room. When he saw the black-robed elder, the first demon venerable's expression changed slightly. He could feel the surging demonic power from the other's body. That kind of aura was much stronger than that of the leaders of the 5 major tribes. The aura of darkness. The black-robed elder's eyes lit up like light bulbs. That's right. Only the bloodline of the great demons can have the aura of darkness. It is so dense. I am Sea Demon Venerable, and I come from the Demon's God continent. When did you come to the Wild's God continent? Did you come here through the mark I left behind? Even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend, who was much stronger than him, the first demon lord still maintained the same appearance. His bloodline was supreme, and in the demon race, he was the future ruler. He didn't need to bow down, even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend. Sea Demon Venerable frowned slightly, but he soon relaxed. The bloodline of the great demons was indeed like this. If it were any other demon genius, he would have already taught them a lesson. Chapter 1380. With his time profound reaching greater completion, Yi Chen's space-time sword arts had thoroughly surpassed 5-element sword arts, yin-yang sword arts, and 4-symbol sword arts. Moreover, it wasn't just by a little bit. It was already not inferior to supreme sword arts. If he could truly create the third style, his battle power would make a huge leap. The third move's concept was simple. It was black hole. Although super supremes could create small black holes, compared to those crude black holes, Yi Chen's was much more difficult. After all, Yi Chen had the support of space-time ultimacy. How could he not make use of this advantage? On the prairie, Yi Chen and Ing Liexiong were in an intense battle. Ing Liexiong didn't use Sky Blast Hammer, and Yi Chen didn't use Sky Sword either. The two of them fought with ordinary supreme weapons. It could be seen that even if Ing Liexiong wasn't serious, he still had the upper hand. The domineering hammer technique looked simple and direct, but it was able to defeat Yi Chen's sword technique every time, causing Yi Chen to be shaken. This is a newly created space-time sword technique, Black Hole Stance. Yi Chen executed the embryonic third move of space-time sword technique, Black Hole Stance. The supreme sword trembled, and 3 black dots appeared in front of Yi Chen. The 3 black dots looked tiny, but they emitted a shocking gravitational force. They enveloped Ing Liexiong in a triangular formation. They weren't fast or slow, as they contained space-time ultimacy. Good move! The 3 gravitational forces stacked together, causing Ing Liexiong to be unable to swing his hammer. The desolation essence in his body was like a raging flood that was about to be released. Rumble! After forcefully defeating the 3 black dots, Ing Liexiong flew out in a pathetic manner. As expected of the space-time sword technique, I nearly suffered. Ing Liexiong decided that the next time he saw Yi Chen execute this move, he had to use 10 times his strength, or he wouldn't be able to suppress this move. Are you saying that the bloodline of the great demon king has appeared? And there's also a peerless genius of the human race? In the Star Ocean tribe, the gray-robed old man looked at Evil Star in shock. Evil Star nodded heavily. The great demon king's bloodline is more terrifying than I imagined. In time, he will definitely become a demigod and rule the world. The only one who can contend against him is that peerless genius of the human race. Therefore, I feel that the evil spirit race has no need to help the demons. Let them deal with the peerless genius of the human race themselves. Although Evil Star had submitted to the first demon venerable, it didn't mean that he didn't have other thoughts. In his opinion, it wasn't a good thing to be the sole ruler. If the first demon Venerable continued to grow like this, no one would be able to stop him. At that time, let alone the Human Race Alliance, even the Demons Alliance would become slaves of the demons. At most, they would be slaves of a slightly higher level. Therefore, he felt that Yi Chen's existence was very necessary. After all, this was different from the past. In the past, such a terrifying figure had never appeared. The war between the Demons Alliance and the Human Race Alliance would last forever, so the evil spirit race naturally didn't need to worry about destroying the Human Race Alliance. What you said makes sense, but we still have to put on a show. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend. The gray-robed old man was the legendary supremacy of the evil spirit race, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light. His strength was comparable to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend's. Although he wasn't afraid of Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend, he didn't want to fall out with the demons. That wouldn't be a good thing for the evil spirit race. Moreover, he and Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend both suspected that a supremacy of the Human Race Alliance had also come to the Wild's God continent. He didn't know if they had left, but he had to be on guard. By the way, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light, how did you come to the Wild's God continent? Heavenly Venerable Evil Light was a legendary supremacy. If he hadn't come to the Wild's God continent, the evil spirit race would have dominated the universe. As if he could read Evil Star's thoughts, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light shook his head and said, "Things are more complicated than you think. Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend and I came to the Wild's God continent a long time ago. As for why we came here, you will find out in the future. All these years, we have been looking for a way to leave the Wild's God continent, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to. The Wild's God mystic realm is too dangerous for us, and it's also a little too strange." You can leave the Wild's God mystic realm? It wasn't that Evil Star hadn't thought of leaving, but he couldn't stay in the Wild's God continent forever. There is only one way for the desolate race to leave the Wild's God continent, and that is to pass through the Wild's God Tower. There are two ways for us outsiders to leave the Wild's God continent. One is to pass through the Wild's God Tower, and the other is to leave through the teleportation array in the Wild's God mystic realm. The first method is too ridiculous, and even if we can pass it, we don't know where we will end up. The Wild's God left the Wild's God Tower behind not just to let the desolate race leave the Wild's God continent, so there is only the second method. Have you found the teleportation array? Evil Star asked. Empyrean Evil Light's face sank. In the Wild's God mystic realm, fierce beasts run rampant. Even with my and Empyrean Sea Fiend's strength, we still have to be careful. It's still unknown if there is a teleportation array or not. 1, 2, 5 black dots appeared, and a large amount of soil was suddenly pulled up. Under the combined effect of the 5 black dots, the soil turned into powder in the air, and then turned into 5 streams that were sucked into the black dots. Compared to the last time he sparred with Ng Liexiong, Yi Chen's black hole stance was even stronger. The number of black holes had increased from 3 to 5, and they maintained an absolute balance without destroying each other. The third stance, black hole stance, is complete. Slowly letting out a breath of turbid air, Yi Chen's eyes returned to normal. Previously, his eyes were like black holes, and this was a change brought about by using the black hole stance. This black hole stance isn't considered weak among the supreme martial arts. Now, the difference between me and the leaders of the 5 tribes is only the difference in martial Dao Yuan soul. Some silver martial Dao Yuan souls were strong, and some were weak. Yi Chen was only at the early silver stage. The first demon Venerable, Evil Star, Kong Xueli, and War Bear were also at this level. HM? Yi Chen abruptly looked toward the west. He could feel a powerful demonic power pervading the air. If it isn't the first demon Venerable, who is it? Due to the distance, Yi Chen couldn't see the other party. Found him. Empyrean Sea Fiend discovered Yi Chen. His figure flashed, and his speed soared. After a few flashes, he was less than 1,000 miles away from Yi Chen. Yi Chen stood there quietly, and Heaven Splitter, who was next to him, had his hair stand on end. Swish. A black light flashed, and Empyrean Sea Fiend landed on the grassland opposite Yi Chen. You are Sword Venerable Yi Chen. Empyrean Sea Fiend asked. Yes, and who are you? Yi Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. He could feel the killing intent from the other party. The reason he stayed here and didn't run away was because he was very confident in his space-time profound meaning. As long as he wanted to run, unless the other party was a quasi-demigod, there was absolutely no way they could catch up to him. I'll give you two choices. One is to obediently surrender, and the other is to be killed by me. Empyrean Sea Fiend sized up Yi Chen and said indifferently. I don't choose either. Heaven Splitter, let's go. Jumping onto Heaven Splitter's back, Yi Chen waved his hand. Space-time instantly distorted, wrapping around Heaven Splitter and disappearing without a trace. When they reappeared, they were already 1,000 miles away. Large success in space-time profound meaning? Empyrean Sea Fiend's face was extremely gloomy. Whoosh, almost the moment Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter disappeared, he chased after them. His aura had already locked onto Yi Chen. Chapter 1381. The two chased, one fleeing, and soon, they were 100,000 miles away. A peerless genius of the human race only knows how to run? Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't help but mock as he saw Yi Chen's figure getting further and further away. If I were a quasi-demigod, you would be the one running. Empyrean Sea Fiend was very strong, stronger than the 5 great tribe leaders. Yi Chen only felt a dangerous aura similar to Empyrean Sea Fiend's from the gold-eating beast. It was clear that even if Empyrean Sea Fiend wasn't as strong as the gold-eating beast, he was at least an existence close to it. The gold-eating beast was a peak legend rank supreme, and even the 5 great tribe leaders could only contend with it. You're very stubborn. Let's see if you can keep being so stubborn when I catch you. Empyrean Sea Fiend released his Sea Fiend domain while chasing Yi Chen. The Sea Fiend domain was vast and mighty, sweeping towards Yi Chen like a vast sea. Within the domain, there were even countless Empyrean Sea Fiend phantoms faintly visible. Sea Fiend domain, 9th domain. Yi Chen's scalp went numb. He felt that once he was enveloped by the other party's domain, there would be no way out. The 9th domain wasn't an ordinary domain. This level of domain could even kill a low-level legend rank supreme. Although a mid-level legend rank supreme and a high-level legend rank supreme could barely contend with it, their combat strength would be greatly reduced. Activating the space-time profound, the space where Yi Chen and Sky Splitter were was violently distorted. They suddenly appeared thousands of miles away, narrowly escaping the Sea Fiend domain. Hateful space-time profound. Empyrean Sea Fiend hated the space-time profound. This kind of profound was absolutely top-notch when it came to escaping. Unless he could trap the other party, he could only slowly chase. Sea Fiend Heaven Torrential Seal. Taking a deep breath, Empyrean Sea Fiend increased his speed. At the same time, he raised his right hand, and black light flickered as he slammed his palm towards the distant Yi Chen. Rumble. Like a landslide, like an earthquake, like a tsunami, like a flood, the violent palm energy rushed towards Yi Chen. Along the way, the flood transformed into a giant seal that shot out. Danger! For a moment, Yi Chen felt his blood flow in reverse and his head felt heavy. The seal behind him seemed to be very far away from him, but the pressure it brought with it was inconceivably great. The space and time he was in seemed to have been locked down by it. Once the seal landed, he and the entire space and time would be flattened and crushed. Such a domineering supreme martial art. Yi Chen had seen Ying Liexiong's reopening heaven and earth, Tai Tan's cleaving the heavens and splitting the earth, Chen Tianding's shattering stars, and Yun Piaomiao's apocalyptic lightning punishment. The first 4 might not be weaker than this move in terms of profoundness, but in terms of battle prowess, the person who used the first 4 moves was still much weaker than their opponent. Fortunately, my space-time ultimacy has reached the large success stage. Relying on the space and time power, Yi Chen avoided the attack range of the seal. The distance between the two was very far, and the seal would take some time to reach Yi Chen. If Yi Chen couldn't dodge it, he might as well hang his neck and die. Empyrean Sea Fiend's demonic power surged like a vast ocean. He didn't care about the loss of demonic power as he crazily chased after Yi Chen. Sometimes it was a seal, sometimes it was a black water dragon, and sometimes it was countless black ropes. Unfortunately, with his space and time power, Yichen was billions of times more slippery than a mudfish. No matter how Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, he couldn't do anything to him. Do you only know how to run? Empyrean Sea Fiend was used to acting like a tyrant on the desolate god continent. After entering the desolate god's secret territory for more than 100,000 years, and after coming out, he was teased by Yichen. His murderous intent surged, and he hated that he couldn't tear Yichen into pieces to relieve the hatred in his heart. Yichen didn't care about Empyrean Sea Fiend. He was just thinking about what to do next. He couldn't keep running. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't come up with an answer. Looking back at Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yichen frowned. I don't know where this old guy came from. Could it be the desolate god's secret territory? Isn't it said that only those who enter the desolate god's secret territory cannot leave? Or maybe it's just a rumor, not true. With my current strength, I can't compete with a peak legendary supreme unless my sword intent and sword domain reach the highest realm. The leaders of the 5 major tribes were all peak legendary supreme. The reason they had their current strength was mainly because their martial yuan spirits were strong enough. According to Yichen's guess, their martial yuan spirits were at the late silver realm. However, for geniuses, martial yuan spirits were the most difficult to improve because it required accumulation and couldn't be achieved overnight. Thus, if Yichen wanted to make up for the shortcomings of his martial yuan spirit, he could only do so if his sword intent and sword domain reached the highest realm. Although my sword intent can improve every day, I don't know when it will end. There is some hope for sword domain. Sword intent was the purest and couldn't tolerate any impurities. Sword domain was a person's achievement in sword Dao, which was directly related to the swordsman's cultivation method. If Yi Chen's Green Lotus Sword spell could break through from Supreme to Legendary, his sword domain would have a great chance of breaking through to the 9th realm. At that time, he would really soar into the sky. Unknowingly, the two had arrived near the desolate god's secret territory. This kid is too hard to deal with. I can't catch him in a short time. It's better to send him into the desolate god's secret territory. With his strength, he won't survive more than a year in there. A thought flashed in Empyrean Sea Fiend's mind. Putting his thoughts into action, Empyrean Sea Fiend began to operate a very rare supreme secret technique. After 10 breaths, a triangular star suddenly appeared, with Empyrean Sea Fiend at one corner. The triangular star grew bigger and bigger, and Yichen couldn't dodge it with his space-time profound several times. This triangular star wasn't an offensive secret technique, so there was no way to escape. Finally, Yichen was covered by the triangular star, and the last corner was inside the desolate god's secret territory. 3-star position. Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, his surging demonic power pouring into the triangular star. Empyrean Sea Fiend's figure moved along the triangular star, quickly moving towards Yichen's corner, while Yichen moved along the triangular star, moving towards the corner inside the desolate god's secret territory. Not good. Yichen was shocked. He had never seen such a strange secret technique that could forcibly change the position of others. Open for me. Yichen erupted with everything he could, but it didn't even create a splash. If the triangular star's energy was a surging river, then Yichen was just an ordinary fish, unable to swim against the current or jump out of the river. In the end, Yichen entered the desolate god's secret territory, and after Yichen reached the other corner, the triangular star quickly disappeared. Although this wasn't an offensive secret technique, it still caused the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory to fluctuate a few times, and a trace of the fluctuation followed the triangular star and hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Empyrean Sea Fiend's face turned pale. The desolate god's will was too overbearing. 3-star position wasn't an offensive secret technique, so it stood to reason that it shouldn't have caused fluctuations in the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory. It was just like entering the desolate god's secret territory wouldn't have any effect, but it still hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Chapter 1382. Entering the desolate god's secret territory means certain death. So what if you're a genius? As long as you haven't matured, you're still a weakling. Empyrean Sea Devil sneered and turned to leave. In his heart, Yichen was already a dead man. Back then, he and Empyrean Evil Light were able to come out alive because they were both peak legend rank supremes. In addition, they also had 2 high-level legend rank Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings. Even so, the two had lived miserable lives for more than 100,000 years. Even the Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings had been killed one by one. Empyrean Sea Devil disappeared without a trace. Outside, what Yichen saw was a lush green forest. But after entering the desolate God's secret territory, Yichen and Heaven Splitter appeared in the sky above a desert. Heaven Splitter, be careful. At this time, Yichen could only rely on Heaven Splitter's hearing and smell. The desolate God continent's laws were unique. The most primitive senses were the most useful. The effect of soul force was far inferior. Heaven Splitter didn't make a sound. He nodded his huge head. The desolate God's secret territory gave him a huge pressure. He was afraid that his roar would attract some terrifying vicious beast. What the two didn't know was that in the depths of the desert, a black furry thing was quietly climbing up. The quicksand on both sides was like flowing water and didn't pose much of an obstacle. Heaven Splitter shook his tail in annoyance. He could faintly feel danger approaching, but he couldn't clearly determine where it was coming from. Just as Heaven Splitter was getting more and more annoyed, a big bump suddenly appeared on the surface of the desert not far away. A gray fountain rushed out from the top of the bump. The fountain was powerful, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't a fountain at all. It was clearly sticky gray spider silk. Although Yichen's hearing and smell weren't as good as Heaven Splitter's, his reaction speed was far higher. With a wave of his hand, space-time distorted, and Yichen and Heaven Splitter disappeared from their original positions. The gray spider silk missed its target and fell to the ground. It stuck to the desert surface and emitted a corrosive sound. The moment Yichen and Sky Splitter disappeared, a black shadow chased after them along the surface of the desert. It had 8 limbs and a chubby, furry body covered in grayish-black stripes. It was clearly a spider beast. Its body was 20 meters wide and had 64 compound eyes. Each compound eye was like a crystal with many facets. One of the facets showed where Yichen and Sky Splitter had appeared. So fast! Yichen looked back and was a little surprised. The spider beast's 8 limbs didn't land on the ground at the same time, but one by one. It looked like it was flying close to the surface of the desert. Every time one of its limbs landed on the ground, a large hole would appear in the desert below. Shockwaves would spread out, causing its speed to reach an unimaginable level. It was probably several times faster than its flying speed. In just a few breaths, the spider beast had caught up. Chaotic stance. Yichen jumped up from Sky Splitter's back, unsheathed the heavenly sword, and used the chaotic stance. The current space-time sword art was equivalent to a supreme sword art, 100 times stronger than the 5-element sword art. The moment the chaotic stance was used, space-time became distorted. It was like countless pieces of glass interweaved together and enveloped the spider beast. Clang, 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 clang. The hairs on the spider beast's body stood up and emitted a fine light. The crisscrossing sword light slashed on it, but it could only cut off a large amount of the hairs. Moreover, the remaining sword light couldn't even break the spider beast's skin. In terms of defense, the spider beast could definitely resist the attacks of high-level legendary supremes. It opened its mouth and shot a spider silk at Yichen. There were only 2 places on its body that could shoot spider silk. One was its tail, and the other was its mouth. The spider silk shot out from its tail was very thick and viscous, used to bind the enemy. There was only one spider silk shot out from its mouth, but its penetrative power was very strong and its speed was much faster. It could be used to attack the enemy. Yichen wanted to test the spider beast's strength, so he slashed with his sword. The spider's silk seemed to have a mind of its own as it entangled Yichen's sky sword. As the spider beast retracted its silk, Yichen felt that Sky Sword was about to fly out of his hand. Break! His right wrist that was holding Sky Sword shook, and the destructive sword chi surged, breaking the spider silk inch by inch. The Sky Sword was a 9-star Earth Saint artifact and contained a powerful might in itself. The spider beast wanted to entangle the Sky Sword with its silk, but it was naturally unable to do so. In close combat, the Sky Sword's offensive power was even more powerful than his own. The Desolate God's secret domain is full of dangers. Sky Splitter's strength is still too low. If I kill this spider beast and let Sky Splitter devour it, it should be able to step into the mid-level legendary beast rank. The stronger Sky Splitter was, the more help it would be to Yi-Chin. Yi-Chin needed its sense of smell, hearing, and acute danger perception. With this thought in mind, Yi-Chin took a deep breath and flew towards the spider beast. Illusion Sword Form. A circle of sword light bubble expanded and enveloped the spider beast. Immediately, it fell into an illusion. Although it wouldn't stay in the illusion for long, 1 or 2 seconds would already be amazing. However, it would at least buy some time for Yi-Chin. Sure enough, after 2 moments, the spider-ferocious beast broke free from the illusion. However, before it could do anything after waking up, a sword pierced through its head. Ashes scattered all over the sky. Space-Time Sword Technique's second move, Sword Burial. This move's ferocity was not even comparable to the Black Hole stance. It was a pure killing sword move. Green juice splattered everywhere as the spider beast struggled violently. Its front 4 limbs were like sharp blades, stabbing towards Yi-Chin, creating a tearing sound. Yi-Chin wasn't greedy. This beast's vitality far surpassed that of a supreme being. This sword strike had only slightly injured it, and this was also due to the sharpness of the heavenly sword. Otherwise, Yi-Chin wouldn't have been confident in piercing through the spider beast's head. Withdrawing and floating backwards, Yi-Chin avoided the spider beast's limbs. At the same time, the third form of the space-time sword art, Black Hole form, was ready. He was just waiting for the spider beast to crash into him. The spider beast was thoroughly enraged by Yi-Chin. Relying on its huge body and tyrannical vitality, its 8 limbs quickly swept across the ground as it rushed towards Yi-Chin. Yi-Chin's expression was grave as he instantly executed the Black Hole form. In an instant, 5 rotating black spots appeared in front of him. As the black spots appeared, a terrifying gravitational force burst forth and superimposed on each other. By the time the spider beast realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Its huge body was directly sucked in by the 5 black spots. Due to its inconceivably powerful defense and terrifying vitality, the 5 black spots were unable to tear it apart at once even though they were constantly devouring its body. Its flesh and blood were only reduced piece by piece, and the spider beast's vitality was also rapidly fading. What a pity! Yi-Chen's eyes flashed with infinite pity. Just now, Sky Splitter had told him that a group of beasts was rushing over from all directions. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to. Chapter 1383. Sky Splitter, let's go! Not caring about the spider beast that was about to be killed, Yi-Chin mounted Sky Splitter and prepared to break out of the encirclement. In just a blink of an eye, he could already see the beasts surrounding him. It was a huge pack of huge wolf beasts. They were called huge wolf beasts because they looked very similar to wolves. Of course, beasts were beasts after all, and they could not look exactly like wolves. These huge wolf beasts had 6 legs and a huge head. Correspondingly, their teeth were huge as well. It's actually an iron fang. Yi-Chin was startled. The Iron Fang beast was a novice legendary fierce beast. A single Iron Fang beast wasn't scary at all. It was many times weaker than any novice legendary fierce beast, and even a pinnacle super fierce beast could contend with it. This was mainly because the Iron Fang beast's attack method was very simple, and the only threatening thing was its bite. However, once the Iron Fang beast formed a large group, it would be a real disaster. With its terrifying bite force, the Iron Fang beast could even bite through the defense of a high-level legendary fierce beast. Even a pinnacle legendary fierce beast wouldn't dare to ignore the bite of the Iron Fang beast. Only a pinnacle legendary fierce beast like the gold-eating beast with an extremely abnormal defense wouldn't be afraid of being surrounded by the Iron Fang beast. A large number of Iron Fang surrounded them. At a glance, there were at least 500 of them. Seeing so many Iron Fang beasts, the heavily injured spider beast no longer dared to act like a superior. It dived its head down and immediately dove into the desert. Unfortunately, the Iron Fang beasts were extremely cunning and wouldn't make a useless encirclement. Dozens of Iron Fang beasts that dove into the desert forced the spider beast out. What followed next was the scene of the spider ferocious beasts fighting the group of iron-toothed beasts. Although the spider ferocious beasts had suffered heavy injuries and their strength had dropped a lot, they were still high-grade legendary rank ferocious beasts. Every time the spider silk on their tails shot out, 4 or 5 iron-toothed beasts would be stuck. The corrosive power of the spider's silk easily corroded the iron-toothed beasts into a sour and stinky liquid. In just a short while, 60 to 70 iron-toothed beasts had died under the spider silk. Of course, the spider beast didn't have it easy either. Its huge body had completely become a target for the Iron Fang beasts. It was bitten until it was covered in blood and flesh. Its life force was getting weaker and weaker. By the time Yi Chen and Sky Splitter had escaped the encirclement, the spider beasts had been devoured by the iron-toothed beasts. The desolate god's secret realm is too savage. Without sufficient strength, it's hard to move an inch here. Seeing the spider ferocious beast being divided and eaten by the Iron Fang beasts, Yi Chen felt very emotional. That was a high-level legendary ferocious beast, yet it was killed by a group of Iron Fang beasts just like that. At this moment, how could he not understand that if he wanted to survive in the desolate god's secret realm, he would either need absolute strength or sufficient numbers. Without both, he could only rely on luck. During the 10 years in the desolate god's secret realm, Yi Chen had encountered more than 10 dangers. The most dangerous one was when he was chased by a peak legendary ferocious beast. That peak legendary ferocious beast had the time and space profound bloodline. It had chased Yi Chen for a whole month, almost pushing Yi Chen into a desperate situation. Fortunately, Yi Chen's luck had always been very strong. When his life was in danger, he hid in a cave. The cave was very narrow and very deep. This peak legendary ferocious beast couldn't enter at all. Just like this, Yi Chen stayed in the cave for a whole 5 years. Fortunately, he had raised a large number of ferocious beasts in the 5-element space. Otherwise, he would have starved to death. Sky Splitter, I don't know if we can get out of here alive. Yi Chen finally understood the dangers of the desolate god's secret realm. It was simply not a life for humans. After only 15 years, he felt tired. If it was 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years, he didn't have the confidence to survive. Sometimes, confidence and strength were equal. Without sufficient strength, how could one have enough confidence? Sky Splitter rubbed his head against Yi Chen's body. All these years, Yi Chen had always been protecting him. He also wanted to protect Yi Chen once, but his strength was too low. No matter, let's take one step at a time. Even if we face a desperate situation, we can't give up, Yi Chen said to himself. Unfalling Eagle Tribe. Ing Liexiong was a little annoyed. The return of Celestial Master Sea Fiend and Celestial Master Evil Light was not a good thing for the 5 tribes. Originally, these two wanted to leave the desolate god continent, so they didn't care much about power, nor did they plan to combine the 5 tribes into one and form a 9th-rank tribe. But this time, the two had obviously given up on the idea of leaving the desolate god continent and wanted to control the 5 tribes in one fell swoop. Fortunately, the leaders of the 5 tribes all had heavenly saint weapons. Although the two were strong, they didn't dare to be too oppressive for a while. After all, the two did not have absolute confidence in suppressing the leaders of the 5 tribes. But this was only temporary. Once the two ran out of patience, they would definitely bare their fangs and fight. Are the future of the desolate race going to be handed over to them? Ing Liexiong was very unwilling. Similarly, the leaders of the other 4 tribes were also unwilling. The 5 of them often contacted each other secretly. Desolate God's secret realm. Yi Chen had spent 50 years in there. He had been annoyed at the beginning, but now he was calm. He knew that annoyance was useless. The desolate god mystic realm was very big. Yi Chen didn't know where he was or where he had arrived. He was completely relying on his intuition to hurry and wander around. Fortunately, in these 50 years, Sky Splitter had become a mid-level legendary fierce beast and had some strength. On this day, Yichen came to a valley. They thought that there were fierce beasts in the valley, but once they entered, Yichen and Sky Splitter immediately felt that something was wrong. The entire valley gave off a quiet feeling. Looking back, the valley entrance had disappeared, replaced by a thick fog. They couldn't see the path they had come from. There was no other way. The man and beast continued moving forward, gradually going deeper into the valley. And the fog behind them was also spreading. It seemed that with every step they took, the fog would spread a little more. Yichen didn't dare to be careless. He placed his right hand on the hilt of the heavenly sword. "Welcome to my world." Suddenly, a voice came. Yichen and Sky Splitter looked around, but they couldn't find where the voice came from. It seemed that the voice should have come from here. "Who is it?" Yichen said loudly. "Wrong, I'm not human. I'm just a desolate spirit created by Lord Desolate God." In front of Yichen, a white light flashed and a human-shaped rabbit appeared. So fast. Yichen squinted his eyes. He couldn't sense any power from the human-shaped rabbit, but its speed made him know that it was extremely dangerous. It was definitely not weaker than the baboon fierce beast, Tifula. "This is your world?" Yichen didn't know what it was planning, so he tried to communicate with it. "That's right." A golden carrot appeared in the human-shaped rabbit's hand. It took a bite and said, "Since you have come to my world, you have to accept my test. If not, you will die." Chapter 1384. What is the test? Yichen didn't need to guess to know that the test would be very dangerous. However, he had no other choice. "Defeat my 7 brothers." The humanoid rabbit waved its hand, and 7 humanoid rabbits appeared in front of it. These 7 humanoid rabbits weren't exactly the same. Some were extremely muscular, some were extremely slender, some were extremely short, and some were chubby. The first humanoid rabbit had a more balanced body, and of course, it looked the most dangerous of them all. The humanoid rabbit continued, "My 7 brothers have the same foundation as you. You start the challenge from little 8. If you fail within a year, you will be killed, and so on. Challenge little 7, you have 2 years. Challenge little 6, 4 years. Challenge little 5, 8 years. As for your pet, lend it to me to play with for a while. If you can survive, I will return it to you." The humanoid rabbit waved his hand, and Sky Splitter uncontrollably ran over. Riding on Sky Splitter's back, the humanoid rabbit disappeared into the fog. "Brothers, take good care of him." In the following days, Yichen was inexplicably subjected to the test. 80 was the strongest humanoid rabbit. It was more than 2 meters tall, and its arms were even thicker than Yichen's thighs. The muscles all over its body were intertwined. From its body, Yichen could sense the purest violence, even purer than the beast's. "I have 1 year to challenge him. Let's see how strong he is first." With this in mind, Yichen stepped forward to challenge little 8. As for the other 6 humanoid rabbits, they had already disappeared into the fog after their boss left. "Come, let me see how strong you are." Little 8 waved his hand, his eyes filled with provocation. "Please advise me." Yichen unsheathed Heaven's sword and unleashed a chaotic stance. As this sword was unleashed, the void seemed to shatter into thousands of pieces, intertwining with each other. The move is not bad, but the power is too weak. Little 8 shook his head and unleashed a punch. Swish! Yichen's sword attack collapsed, and he was forced to take a step back. So strong. Yichen's eyes turned solemn as he unleashed the second style of space-time sword, Burial Sword. The power is still too weak. Little 8 punched out again, breaking the sword burial style cleanly. Is this what it means to defeat 10 with brute force? Yichen did not feel that Little 8's fist technique was very profound, but his own sword technique was unable to contend against the opponent's fist technique. It collapsed upon contact. Black hole form. Yichen used his strongest sword technique, black hole form. As the heavenly sword was swung, 5 rotating black dots enveloped Little 8. This move is interesting, but it's a pity that its power is still lacking. 80's right arm muscles swelled as it punched out. Crackling sounds could be heard as 5 black dots exploded. A berserk power shot out in all directions, blowing Yichen away in a sorry state. 80 stood still and commented, "If you want to resist me, your power Upanishad must reach the consummate realm. Do as you see fit." Must the power Upanishad reach the complete realm? Yichen fell into deep thought. In the next 3 months, Yichen would challenge little 8 every 3 days. He realized that he could feel the source of the power Upanishad from little 8's fist technique, which was incredible. One had to know that he could not feel the source of the power Upanishad from Heaven Splitter. He could only feel the existence of the power Upanishad. Could it be? Yichen thought of a possibility. Legend had it that after the Upanishad reached the complete realm, there was an even higher realm, and that was the law. If the opponent had grasped a trace of the power law, they could indeed sense the source of the power Upanishad more clearly. However, even an ordinary demigod could not comprehend the law. Could it be that the opponent in front of him was a powerful demigod? No, since the opponent was created by the desolate god, it was very simple for the desolate god to bestow the power of law to them. They did not need to reach the demigod realm. Thinking of this, Yichen's heart trembled. Clearly, the humanoid rabbits were different from the desolate god tower's desolate spirits. They were more special and unpredictable. After exchanging blows again and again, Yichen's comprehension of the power Upanishad deepened. Power is everywhere. Power can penetrate the heavens and the earth. Power exists in every corner, including the mind. Power is power, and it comes from faith. Another month passed. Finally, Yichen's power Upanishad reached the complete realm. With the improvement of the power Upanishad, his heart power had also improved by a lot. From the mid-stage of the heart sword realm to the peak of the mid-stage of the heart sword realm, he was only one step away from the late stage of the heart sword realm. The power Upanishad was too special. One had to have enough faith. Without enough faith, it would be impossible to completely understand the power Upanishad. However, the requirement for a refined body sovereign to understand the power Upanishad was much lower. Their chi and blood were very vigorous, and they were innately compatible with the power Upanishad. It was just like in the world of ordinary people, strong people would always give people a sense of security. This was also a manifestation of power. With the Upanishad of the power Upanishad, all of Yichen's sword arts had been upgraded to supreme sword arts. Among them, the space-time sword art was the strongest. It was originally not a weak supreme sword art, but now, it was unknown how many times stronger it was. Very good. In just 4 months, you have comprehended the power Upanishad to the Upanishad. Your comprehension is not bad. You have passed my test. Little 8 nodded. He was very satisfied with Yichen's performance. "I want to have a spar with you." Since the other party's foundation was the same as his, Yichen wanted to know what level the other party's strength was at, and whether he had grasped a trace of the power law. "Have a spar with me?" Little 8's body, which was about to leave, stopped. He turned his head and looked at Yichen. "Do you think that I am too friendly to you?" Little 8's eyes turned blood red, and his killing intent was revealed. Yichen was about to explain, but it was too late. Little 8's thick legs stomped on the ground. Before Yichen could react, he saw a violent fist smashing over. This fist contained incomparably terrifying violence. Yichen was sure that even the baboon ferocious beast, Tifula, wasn't this terrifying. "Little 8, you are being mischievous again." A hand stopped Little 8's fist. It was the human-shaped rabbit that Yichen saw at the beginning. He had appeared beside Yichen out of nowhere and blocked this attack for Yichen. Otherwise, Yichen would have died. "Big brother." The blood in Little 8's eyes faded. He glared at Yichen and turned to leave. Yichen heaved a sigh of relief. He was a little confused. He didn't know why the other party wanted to kill him. "My 7 brothers, besides second brother and third brother, the other 5 are more irritable. You must not disobey them or do anything unnecessary," the human-shaped rabbit said while gnawing on the golden radish. "Understood." After this lesson, How could Yichen not understand that in this place, he was just an ant? All he had to do was accept the test obediently and not do anything else. Your comprehension is not bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have saved you. I would have let you be killed by little 8. Take care. The human-shaped rabbit took a step and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1385. Very quickly, 7 came out. Shao-Chi's body was tall and slim, slightly taller than Yichen. It had a pair of rabbit eyes that were very narrow and sharp. Although 8 is stronger than me, similar to second and third brother, my test is much harder than 8's. If you don't meet the requirements, I will kill you. 7 said without any emotions. Understood. Yichen nodded his head. Very good, I will only use 1,000th of my strength. If you can defeat me, then you pass. The 7 of them were all stronger than Yichen, and it was impossible for Yichen to defeat them. But boss gave them a rule which was to suppress their strength. 8 suppressed it the most, but he didn't like to be defeated by Yichen, so he said that Yichen passed. But Yichen said that he wanted to exchange blows with him, which infuriated 8. Without a doubt, Yichen lost the first time he clashed with 7. Shao-Chi specialized in leg arts. Once that pair of rabbit legs kicked toward Yichen, the sky was filled with leg shadows. Each leg shadow contained an explosive power, and Yichen could sense the 5 profound of earth, water, fire, wind, and strength. However, Yichen could also sense that Shao-Chi had not mastered the power law, but his leg arts were much more profound than his sword arts. 2 years, how can I defeat him? This was just 1,000th of his strength. If he went all out, he could smash him into pieces with one kick and wipe him out of this world. Your sword technique hasn't reached the peak, and you haven't merged the mysteries of strength and the other mysteries. 7 reminded Yichen. Yichen faintly nodded. Indeed, because he had only raised his power profound to perfection half a year ago, his sword arts couldn't reach perfection in such a short time. Moreover, Shao-Chi's leg arts were clearly a level higher than his sword arts. If he wanted to defeat 1,000th of the opponent's strength, his sword arts would have to be at least at the same level as the opponent's leg arts. 2 years wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. It depended on how he spent it. To Yichen, these 2 years had passed too quickly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. The 4 symbols sword art has finally reached perfection. After countless exchanges, Yichen's 4 symbols sword art became more and more perfect. In the end, its might even surpassed that of the space-time sword art. Every move was naturally domineering. Overlord sword of the 4 elephants. Challenging 7 once more, Yichen used the first stance of the 4 elephant sword technique, the 4 elephant overlord sword. With a flash of sword light, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise tangled together, slashing towards the leg shadows. Crackle. This time, the 2 of them were evenly matched. Take my kick again. This was the first time 7 moved. Her speed was unbelievably fast. In just a blink of an eye, 7 appeared on the right side of Yichen and kicked. This kick made Yichen feel a world-destroying power. If he wasn't careful, even the Saint artifact armor wouldn't be able to protect his life. Even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. 4 extremes of heaven and earth. The 4 beast sword energy condensed on his body, and the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise sword auras appeared around Yichen's body, canceling out a part of Shao-Chi's leg energy. Meanwhile, Yichen flipped his wrist, and the heaven sword violently stabbed toward Shao-Chi. A chaotic sword light condensed on the sword tip. For elephant sword technique 3rd stance, destruction sword. 7 hurriedly swept his leg towards the sword light. Long. A destructive shockwave radiated out in all directions. 7 flew backward and landed on the ground in a stagger. You've actually created a new sword technique. You've won. Shao-Chi looked at Yichen with a shocked expression. In the past, among the people who had entered the desolate god's secret realm, there were very few who had passed Shao-Chi's level, not to mention her level. In the past million years, apart from Yichen, only 9 people had passed her level. Moreover, they had spent more time than Yichen, which was almost 2 years. I was lucky. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. The destruction sword was on the same level as the black hole stance. However, the four-elephant sword technique merged power more completely, which was why it was much stronger than the black hole stance. If not, he wouldn't have been able to defeat 7. There is no luck. This is your potential. 7 flashed into the mist. Next is 6. I don't know what aspect I need to improve on this time. 8 allowed his power to reach the max realm. 7's test allowed his power to be merged into the four-elephant sword technique. Yi Chen guessed that the content of each stage would be different. To Yi Chen, the test in the valley was both a danger and an opportunity. 6 came out. Little 6 was very short, only a little over a meter tall. You're pretty good to be able to make it to my place. But let me tell you something. In the past million years, of the 9 people who made it to my place, only 4 of them managed to defeat me when I was at 1,000th of my strength, Little 6 said slowly. I will do my best. 6's strength wasn't much stronger than 7's. Yi Chen, who created the destruction sword, could even exchange dozens of blows with him and didn't collapse right away. Little 6 specialized in palm techniques, which contain the 5 elemental profundities and power profundities. They are both supreme martial skills, but my annihilation sword is slightly weaker than his. It seems like I have to create the 4th style of the 5-element sword art. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have to integrate the profound of power into the 5-element sword art, just like the 4-symbol sword art. In the following days, Yi Chen didn't use the 4-elephant sword technique to fight 6. Instead, he used the 5-element sword technique. In the first year, Yi Chen lost miserably every time. Luckily, 6 controlled his strength and didn't kill Yi Chen within 4 years. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have died hundreds of times. In the second year, Yi Chen successfully merged the power mysteries into the 5-element sword technique. It increased the power of the 5-element sword technique. Unfortunately, the third move, defense sword technique, was much weaker than the destruction sword technique. Even the destruction sword technique couldn't do anything to 6, let alone the defense sword technique. I have to create the 4th move. Yi Chen carefully observed 6's palm technique and hoped to find inspiration. The 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and subduing each other. 5 elements is the most stable among the complementary powers Upanishads because it is composed of 5 different powers Upanishads. If I want to use the deepest essence of the 5 elements Upanishads, I must learn from each other and find the key point. Yi Chen did not stop thinking at all times. His mind was filled with inspiration. On the 3rd year, Yi Chen, who had been blown away once again, seemed to have a 5-element mountain in his mind. Each mountain was shaped like a huge stone sword, incomparably heavy. Got it. Joy flashed in Yi Chen's eyes and he waved his sword. The thick sword light seemed like it was going to crush everything in front of it. It slashed at 6 with unstoppable momentum. Chapter 1386. Rumble. Little 6's entire body was sent flying. Yi Chen's sword was like a hole, like a mountain, like the sea, like the earth, like the sky. As this sword slashed out, Yi Chen felt as if his soul and body had been swept out, and there was a feeling of emptiness. Heavy sword style. The 4th style of the 5 elements sword style, heavy sword style. In the universe, the 5 elements were the most stable. If they continued to evolve, they would become planets, and planets were the place where all life lived. Stepping on the earth was very stable. Yi Chen's heavy sword style had obtained this essence. What is the name of this move? Little 6 curiously sized up Yi Chen. Heavy sword style. Yi Chen replied. Heavy sword style, not bad. Maybe you have a chance to reach 3rd brother's level. Of course, the premise is that you can continue to improve. After saying this, Little 6 entered the fog and disappeared. Watching Little 6 leave, Yi Chen looked at the sword in his hand and said to himself, Heavy sword style, this is the eruption of all my inspiration. Even if I can create the 3rd style of the yin-yang sword style, it will definitely not be as good as the heavy sword style. After all, the 5-element sword style was the first sword style created by Yi Chen, and Yi Chen had also spent the most effort on it. The heavy sword style could be said to be a transformation of the 5 elements sword style, a sublimation. If the 5 elements sword style was the soil, then the heavy sword style was a sapling that grew on the soil, absorbing the essence of the 5 elements sword style. In terms of power, the heavy sword style was the well-deserved number 1 sword style of Yi Chen. The shattering sword style and the black hole style couldn't compare to it. In fact, Yi Chen felt that the supreme martial arts of the 5 tribe leaders or Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't compare to the heavy sword style. He felt that the heavy sword style was weaker than the heavy sword style. This had nothing to do with the passage of time. It was a completely coincidental burst of inspiration. My current strength shouldn't be much weaker than the leaders of the 5 tribes. Yi Chen was sure that he was still not a match for the leaders of the 5 major tribes. However, it was not like before, where the gap between them was ridiculously huge. The martial Tao primordial spirits of the leaders of the 5 major tribes were stronger than his. They were at least at the intermediate silver level. However, his heart power was higher than theirs. He was at the peak of the intermediate stage of the heart sword realm. He was only 1 step away from the late stage. Heart power had nothing to do with time. Generally, the more talented one was, the higher one's heart power would be. Those who relied on time to improve their heart power would not be too high unless they had some kind of opportunity. For example, the Redbud Flower tribe had a very high average heart power because they had the word heart left behind by the demigod. The 5 tribe leaders had the advantage of having a strong martial Tao Yuan Shen and possessing a heavenly saint artifact. Yi Chen's advantage was that his heart force was strong and his heavy sword style was slightly better. However, compared to Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yi Chen was still ridiculously lacking. Not to mention anything else, just Empyrean Sea Fiend's 9th level domain was enough to strangle all of his advantages. Little 5 was chubby and looked like a rolling ball as he walked. Yi Chen could tell at a glance that the other party was walking the path of body tempering. Moreover, it was not an ordinary path. Even with the naked eye, Yi Chen could see that the fat on Little 5's body was astonishingly elastic. As he walked, the fat on his body shook up and down, and a buzzing sound could be heard continuously. One could faintly see circles of ripples spreading out. If you can scratch my skin a little, you win. Little 5 sat down and took a huge silver radish to gnaw on. He did not even look at Yi Chen as he enjoyed himself. That fat. Yi Chen frowned. He felt that it would not be easy to scratch Little 5's skin. After hesitating for a moment, Yi Chen began to attack. First, he used the Annihilation Sword. The penetrating power of this sword was very strong, enough to destroy everything. The heavenly sword stabbed out violently, and the chaotic sword light swept towards Little 5. A scene that made Yi Chen's scalp tingle occurred. When the chaotic sword light landed on Little 5's body, it felt as if it had landed on an elastic rubber. It first sank in and then bounced back, almost hitting Yi Chen himself. What kind of body tempering technique is this? Yi Chen clicked his tongue. Not giving up, Yi Chen held the sword with both hands and slashed out. An incomparably heavy sword light swept towards Little 5 again. This sword was the heavy sword style, Yi Chen's strongest sword move. Unfortunately, although the heavy sword style was incomparably heavy, Little 5's fat was even stronger. The heavy sword light slashed on it, causing the fat to tremble unceasingly. As the fat trembled, the power of the sword light continued to weaken. With a pew sound, the sword was sliced open and slashed on the ground to the right of Little 5, leaving a sword mark. The heavy sword style was still ineffective. So that's how it is. Yi Chen finally understood the secret of Little 5's fat. Little 5 was indeed walking the path of body tempering, and his body tempering technique actually contained the profound meaning of yin and yang. It was just like the Taiji fist, hard and soft, yin and yang coexisting. Unless the attack was much stronger than the defense, it would be impossible to break through the defense. Of course, he could also study the yin-yang sword style and create a yin-yang sword move that could restrain the opponent. Fortunately, the time limit for challenging Little 5 was 8 years. There should be enough time. Giving up on other sword arts, Yi Chen began to use the yin-yang sword style to test Little Five's fat. Yi Chen's yin-yang sword style currently had two styles. The first was yin and yang coexisting, and the second was yin-yang tai chi yin and yang coexisting, and the sword chi had spirituality. It wouldn't increase or decrease, and it wouldn't dissipate. After locking onto the opponent's chi, unless the opponent died or was broken, it wouldn't disappear. However, Little Five's fat wouldn't be affected by hard or soft methods. Yin and yang coexisting couldn't do anything about it, mainly because the power of yin and yang coexisting wasn't strong enough. Yi Chen's train of thought was to create an enhanced version of yin and yang coexisting. Time passed unknowingly. Yi Chen had more and more inspiration for the yin-yang sword style. As he was immersed in the yin-yang sword style for a long time, Yi Chen's every move, gaze, and train of thought contained the changes of yin and yang. This was something that even he didn't notice. Only Little Five looked at Yi Chen in surprise. Boss has good eyesight. It won't be long before this kid can break my yin-yang tyrant body. Little Five thought in his heart. The 5th year. Done. Yi Chen revealed a smile on his face as he looked at Little Five. Come on, let me see what sword move you have created. Little Five stood up, and the fat on his body shook violently. With him as the center, circles of ripples spread out, as if a stone was thrown into a calm lake. This move of mine is called yin-yang wuji. Take this. Yin-yang sword style's first style, yin and yang coexisting. The second style, yin-yang tai chi. The third style, yin-yang wuji. Holding the heavenly sword in his hand, Yi Chen seemed slow but was actually fast. He slashed out with his sword. Without a sound, a slippery sword chi that was like a loach swam towards Little Five. Little Five's eyes narrowed, and the fat on his body shook even more violently. The sword chi kept swimming around Xiaowu's body, looking for a weak point. Xiaowu wanted to use his fat to repel the sword chi, but the sword chi was even more slippery than his fat. After several tries, Xiaowu said helplessly, "You win." Although the sword chi couldn't penetrate his defense for the time being, as time passed, he would eventually leave a flaw. Chapter 1387. You are the most talented person I have seen in a million years. Boss's vision is really not something we can compare with. But from Brother 4 onwards, you have to be careful. He has the 9th domain. Xiaowu was very optimistic about Yi Chen. Creating a sword movement that could restrain the yin-yang tyrant body in 8 years was not something that ordinary people could do. He had thought that Yi Chen would not be able to do it, but he did not expect that not only did he do it, he did it 3 years ahead of time. I will give it my all. Yi Chen found that these humanoid rabbits were actually quite gentle as long as they were not provoked. Little Four's body shape was very similar to Little Eight's, but he did not have as many muscles as Little Eight. He was a very burly type, and Yi Chen felt an invisible pressure from him. Little Four's voice was very cold. My domain is the scorching domain. If you can't resist it, you will be burned to ashes. With that said, with Little Four as the center, a terrifying force spread out. Wherever it went, the ground melted and the void cracked. This scorching heat was no longer a simple change in temperature, but a change in the rules. Seeing this, Yi Chen's expression couldn't help but change. When Sea Demon Heavenly Venerable was chasing him, although his Sea Demon domain was equally frightening, he was running for his life at that time. How could he have the energy to feel the Sea Demon domain? He only felt that he was no match for it. Is this the 9th domain? Although the domain could not increase one's combat power by much, it could suppress the enemy's strength. When the enemy's strength was suppressed, it was equivalent to his own strength being increased in disguise. In short, the domain must not be weak. Even if it didn't suppress others, at least it couldn't be suppressed by others. Originally, Yi Chen thought that even if the 9th domain was many times stronger than the peak 8th domain, it would not be too outrageous. But now seeing the power of the scorching domain, he knew that he was wrong. The 9th domain was not on the same level as the peak 8th domain. The power of the 9th domain was not weaker than a perfect supreme martial art. Once enveloped, it was equivalent to being bombarded by a perfect supreme martial art at all times. Let alone using 100% of one's strength, it would be good if one could use 1,000th of one's strength. If one stayed inside for a long time, as Little Four said, he would be burned to ashes. If you can stay in the scorching domain for 15 minutes, you win. Little Four said. Let me try. After speaking, Yichen propped up his green lotus sword domain and walked into his opponent's scorching domain. It was like a ball of snow thrown into a furnace. Within a few breaths, Yi Chen's green lotus sword realm had been melted, and he could no longer release it. Without the green lotus sword realm, Yi Chen could only use his immortal sword body to resist Little Four's scorching realm. 1 breath. 10 breaths. 100 breaths. I can't. Like a cooked shrimp, Yi Chen retreated from the scorching domain. His whole body was steaming hot, and his skin was red. 100 breaths is my limit. Yi Chen shook his head. Seeing that Yi Chen had retreated, Little Four immediately took back his scorching domain. Maintaining the scorching domain would consume a lot of his power, and it would be impossible for him to maintain it continuously. In the following month, Yi Chen did not try again. He was very clear that unless his green lotus sword realm could break through to the 9th level, or his immortal sword body could break through to the 14th level from the 12th level, he would not be able to resist his opponent's scorching domain. There was no need to think about the immortal sword body. Without enough supreme great swords, he would not be able to improve it. Therefore, the only way was to improve his green lotus sword realm. And the fastest way to improve his green lotus sword realm was to make a breakthrough in his martial arts. Yi Chen's green lotus sword spell was a supreme martial art. As long as he could break through to the legendary level, there was a 50% chance that he could make his green lotus sword realm reach the 9th level. Little Five's body training martial art contained the profound of yin and yang. I can also make my martial art contain the profound of the 5 elements. Keeping to his words, Yi Chen tried to combine the green lotus sword spell with the 5 elements profound. The earliest green lotus sword spell was a wood element sword spell, but it did not matter, since it did not conflict with the 5 elements profound, since there was a wood element profound within the 5 elements. As long as the wood element profound was the main element, it would be fine as long as the other 4 were the support. This was the so-called wood element being the main element of the 5 elements. Not only would it not affect the effect of the green lotus sword spell, it would also infinitely increase the effect of the green lotus sword spell. In the 3rd month, Yi Chen combined the wood element profound with the green lotus sword spell. The process was very smooth, since the green lotus sword spell was originally of the wood element. In the 6th month, Yi Chen combined the fire element profound with the green lotus sword spell. Wood fed fire, and the next would be earth. In the 2nd year, the earth element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 4th year, the gold element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 8th year, the water element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. The process was that wood fed fire, fire fed earth, earth fed metal, and metal fed water. However, it was not over yet, because the 5 elements profound had not completed a cycle yet. Like a circle, wood fed fire, fire fed earth, earth fed metal, and metal fed water. In the end, water and wood needed to be connected together as well. In the 12th year, Yi Chen's body shone with a layer of blue light, which contained 5 different colors. Then, a huge 5-colored green lotus grew, bloomed, and bore fruit. With the birth of the 5-colored green lotus, Yi Chen sat on top of it with his legs crossed. The green lotus seemed to have become one with him. Yi Chen opened his eyes, and a 5-colored godly light flashed out. So this is the legendary martial art? So magical! Although the supreme martial art was extremely powerful, compared to the legendary martial art, it was not even worth mentioning. The legendary martial art seemed to have its own consciousness, or perhaps it had combined with his bloodline. At this moment, the green lotus sword spell was not just a martial art, but more like the power of Yi Chen's bloodline. With one breath, the green lotus sword spell operated naturally. It was just like the qi and blood in the human body, operating naturally. There was no need to purposely activate it. With a thought, the Green Lotus Sword Realm was released. Gurgle, gurgle, the sound of flowing water was heard, and the Green Lotus Sword Realm had an earth-shattering change. With Yi Chen as the center, a huge 5-colored green lotus shadow spread out and kept growing. Yi Chen had a feeling that if he used all of his power, the Green Lotus Sword Realm could cover 1 light year, 10 light years, or even more. Of course, it would have to be outside of the Huangshan continent, since the Huangshan continent was not even 1 light year big. The Huangshan continent was enough to limit the Sword Realm to a very small area. Little Four stared at Yi Chen without blinking. His eyes were filled with expectation. How could he not see that Yi Chen had made a huge breakthrough in the past 12 years? The Green Lotus Sword Realm had reached the 9th level. Come on! Little Four released his scorching domain. All right. Yi Chen maintained the Green Lotus Sword Realm as he walked towards Little Four step by step. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.